Welcome to Whispered Tales. Today, we share a story about learning to trust again after experiencing heartbreak. Join us as we follow a journey of healing, courage, and discovering the strength to open your heart once more. Sophie Reynolds sat on the balcony of her apartment, staring at the city below as memories of betrayal and heartbreak washed over her. She had loved deeply, given her trust fully, and yet the person she had counted on had let her down in ways she never imagined. Friends told her to move on, to protect herself, and to be careful with her heart, but the pain lingered, gnawing at her confidence and shaking her belief in people. How could she ever let herself trust again when the wounds still felt fresh? Every glance, every smile, even the simplest gestures from others now carried the weight of doubt. For weeks, Sophie retreated into herself. She avoided deep conversations, guarded her feelings, and built invisible walls around her heart. At first, this protection felt comforting, like a shield against further pain, but over time she realized it was also isolating her from connection, from friendship, and from potential joy. She longed to believe that trust could exist again, yet fear kept whispering that opening up would only lead to more disappointment. The struggle wasn't about finding the right person to trust. It was about finding the courage to trust her own judgment, her own feelings, and her own heart once more. One rainy afternoon, Sophie decided to take a long walk through a quiet park near her apartment. The rhythm of raindrops against the leaves, the smell of wet earth, and the gentle sound of flowing water seemed to mirror her own inner turmoil. She noticed people walking with umbrellas, some chatting, some lost in thought, yet all moving forward despite the rain. And in that moment it hit her. Trust, like life, was not about avoiding storms, but learning to move forward despite them. She realized that healing would require patience, self-compassion, and a willingness to be vulnerable again. Sophie began small. She started practicing trust in low-stakes situations, listening fully to friends without suspicion, sharing minor worries, and allowing herself to rely on others for small favors. Each time she did, she felt a tiny spark of courage ignite within her. Trust wasn't a switch that flipped instantly. It was a skill, a muscle that had atrophied and needed gentle strengthening. By acknowledging her fears and still choosing to act despite them, Sophie began to reclaim her ability to connect, to believe, and to open her heart. By the end of the week, Sophie noticed a subtle shift in her perception. The wounds of the past still existed, but they no longer dictated her every action. She realized that trust was not about guaranteeing that people wouldn't hurt her. It was about believing in her own resilience, in her ability to navigate disappointment, and in the possibility of genuine connection. Sitting back on her balcony, watching the rain taper off into a soft drizzle, Sophie whispered to herself, "I may have been hurt, but I can learn to trust again. I am strong. I am open. I am ready to believe." Over the next few days, Sophie began exploring the idea that trust starts from within. She realized that before she could fully trust others, she needed to trust herself, her instincts, her judgments, and her emotional resilience. She journaled each evening, reflecting on her past experiences, identifying patterns, and acknowledging the lessons she had learned. By confronting the pain rather than avoiding it, she discovered that her heartbreak was not a sign of weakness, but a testament to the depth of her love and capacity for connection. She could honor her past while choosing to move forward, a realization that gave her a quiet but steady courage. Sophie also sought support from those who had proven reliable over time. Friends who had remained steadfast during difficult periods became her anchors. She allowed herself to share her fears openly, noticing how genuine listening and empathy could slowly rebuild the sense of safety she had lost. She discovered that trust could be nurtured gradually, one conversation, one act, and one shared moment at a time. Each interaction became a small victory, a proof that her heart could heal and that vulnerability didn't always lead to pain. In addition, Sophie began to redefine what trust meant to her. She realized it wasn't about blind faith or ignoring red flags. It was about discernment, awareness, and courage. Trust required boundaries, knowing when to protect her heart while still giving others a chance. She started practicing this balance in her daily life, learning to gauge situations thoughtfully while remaining open. The process wasn't linear. Some days brought setbacks, doubts, or lingering fears. But each conscious choice to engage, share, and rely on others strengthened her emotional muscles. One evening, Sophie joined a small volunteer group at a local shelter. She had always wanted to help, but her fear of being hurt had kept her from fully engaging with new people. That night, as she helped organize supplies and connect with strangers, she realized how liberating it felt to trust in a shared purpose. She laughed, collaborated, and even shared personal stories without fear. For the first time in months, she felt a sense of belonging and connection that wasn't conditional on perfection or guaranteed outcomes. It was raw, imperfect, and beautiful, a living proof that trust could exist again, even after heartbreak. By the end of the chapter, Sophie felt a shift within herself. Trust was no longer a distant dream or a fragile hope. It was a practice, a daily choice, and a reflection of her courage. She understood that being hurt in the past didn't prevent her from believing in others or in the goodness of human connection. Slowly, with patience, self-awareness, and conscious effort, she was learning to open her heart again. Sitting quietly in her room, Sophie whispered softly, "I have been hurt, but I am learning to trust again. I am brave, I am resilient, I am ready to love and believe." As Sophie continued her journey, she began to notice that healing and rebuilding trust were deeply intertwined. She realized that her fear of being hurt again was natural, but allowing that fear to dominate her actions would prevent her from experiencing connection and joy. Instead of rushing to trust or expecting immediate security, she approached relationships and interactions with patience and mindfulness. She reminded herself that vulnerability was not a weakness, but a sign of strength, a willingness to open her heart despite uncertainty. Sophie also learned that past experiences could inform her decisions without defining them. She reflected on previous relationships and friendships, identifying red flags and patterns that had contributed to disappointment. By understanding these lessons, she felt empowered rather than burdened. This self-awareness became a guide for building healthier boundaries, choosing trustworthy people, and recognizing when her heart was safe to open. She discovered that trusting again didn't mean ignoring the past, it meant learning from it and stepping forward with wisdom and courage. One sunny afternoon, Sophie attended a local art workshop she had been curious about for months. Surrounded by strangers, she initially felt hesitant, worried about being judged or disappointed. But as the class progressed, she began to relax, engage, and even share her thoughts openly. By focusing on the creative process and participating wholeheartedly, she realized how liberating it felt to trust the moment, trust her instincts, and trust in the kindness of others. Every smile, every collaborative effort, and every conversation became evidence that trust could exist again and that her heart could open safely, slowly, and intentionally. Sophie also began integrating trust into her daily life in small, deliberate ways. She allowed herself to delegate tasks at work, rely on friends for support, and share her feelings honestly with those she valued. Each small act of reliance became a building block, strengthening her confidence in herself and others. She learned that trust didn't need to be absolute or instantaneous. It could be nurtured gradually, with patience, reflection, and conscious effort. Every success, no matter how minor, reinforced her belief that she was capable of forming meaningful and secure connections once more. By the end of the chapter, Sophie felt a subtle but powerful transformation. The walls she had built around her heart were no longer prisons. They were carefully crafted boundaries that allowed for safe exploration, connection, and growth. She understood that trusting again was not about eliminating fear, but about balancing it with courage, wisdom, and self-respect. Sitting on her balcony one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, Sophie whispered softly to herself, "I am learning to trust again. I am cautious but brave. I am open but strong. I am ready for connection, and I will honor my heart." Over time, Sophie began to notice how trust was not just about others, it was deeply tied to trusting herself. She realized that to rely on others safely, she first had to rely on her own judgment, instincts, and ability to set boundaries. Each time she made a thoughtful decision, even in small matters, she reinforced her confidence. Whether it was declining an invitation she didn't feel comfortable with, or expressing her needs clearly in a friendship, these choices became exercises in self-trust. Sophie discovered that self-trust and trust in others grew hand in hand, each supporting the other. Sophie also understood that vulnerability was a form of courage. Opening her heart didn't mean abandoning caution, it meant balancing risk with discernment. She started letting herself share feelings, opinions, and ideas gradually, observing how people responded and learning from each interaction. Some encounters brought discomfort or disappointment, but Sophie approached them with curiosity rather than fear. She realized that mistakes and setbacks were not failures, they were opportunities to refine her understanding of trust and human connection. As she explored relationships further, Sophie noticed that genuine connection thrived on honesty and empathy. She began to value people who demonstrated integrity and kindness consistently, instead of expecting perfection or projecting past fears onto new encounters. Trust, she realized, was built over time, through repeated experiences that proved reliability, respect, and care. Each act of honesty she witnessed, each small kindness she received, became a brick in the foundation of her renewed faith in others. One evening, Sophie attended a small gathering organized by a mutual friend. Initially, she felt hesitant, unsure whether to engage fully. But as she conversed with people who shared laughter, respect, and warmth, she noticed the fear in her chest slowly soften. She could feel the difference between those who deserved her trust and those who did not. This awareness was empowering. For the first time in a long while, Sophie experienced the joy of connection without anxiety dominating her heart. She realized that trust could coexist with caution, and vulnerability could coexist with self-respect. By the end of the chapter, Sophie felt stronger, wiser, and more open than she had in years. She had learned that trusting again was not about erasing the past, but integrating it, acknowledging the hurt, honoring the lessons, and stepping forward with courage. Sitting quietly on her balcony at night, the city lights twinkling below, Sophie whispered softly to herself, "I am learning to trust again. I am brave. I am cautious. I am open. I am ready to let my heart grow." As Sophie's journey continued, she began to understand that trust was not a one-time decision, it was a daily practice. Each day offered new opportunities to test her boundaries, exercise discernment, and nurture meaningful connections. She started approaching relationships with intention, giving her heart in measured, conscious ways rather than impulsively. This approach didn't make her cold or distant. Instead, it allowed her to participate fully in connections while protecting herself from unnecessary harm. Every small step she took reinforced her confidence that she could trust wisely without repeating past mistakes. Sophie also realized the power of forgiveness, not for the sake of others, but for herself. Holding on to resentment or fear kept her trapped in the past, preventing her from experiencing new joys and forming healthy bonds. By acknowledging the pain and gently letting go of the anger and mistrust it carried, she freed herself to engage with the world authentically. Forgiveness became a tool of liberation, allowing her to separate past hurt from present possibilities and to approach people and situations with clarity rather than fear. In her professional life, Sophie began noticing how trust influenced teamwork and collaboration. By being reliable and open with her colleagues, she fostered mutual respect and understanding. When others reciprocated with honesty and integrity, Sophie felt her confidence in human connection deepen. She recognized that trust wasn't blind, it was earned, observed, and reinforced over time through consistent actions. This reinforced her belief that despite past heartbreak, genuine and trustworthy relationships were possible, and that she was capable of identifying and nurturing them.
Sophie also embraced vulnerability in moments of intimacy, letting people see the authentic, unguarded parts of herself. At first, this was uncomfortable, and sometimes it resulted in minor disappointments or awkward encounters. But each experience taught her something valuable about herself, about others, and about the nature of trust. She learned that true connection was built through repeated, honest exchanges, and that the courage to be open was far more valuable than the illusion of safety behind walls. By the end of the chapter, Sophie felt a profound sense of empowerment. She understood that trusting again was not a return to naivety, but an evolution of strength, self-awareness, and courage. Her heart, once bruised and wary, had learned resilience. Sitting quietly in her room, looking out at the moonlit sky, she whispered softly, "I have been hurt, but I am learning to trust again. I am cautious, I am brave, and I am ready to open my heart to those who deserve it. I am capable of love, connection, and trust." Over time, Sophie realized that trust was not something given lightly. It was earned, nurtured, and continually practiced. She no longer measured trust by the fear of being hurt, but by the courage to engage, the wisdom to set boundaries, and the awareness to choose relationships that aligned with her values. She had learned to listen to her instincts, honor her feelings, and act intentionally, creating a foundation of trust that was both strong and resilient. Each positive interaction reinforced her confidence that opening her heart was not dangerous, but an act of strength. Sophie also recognized that trust could coexist with self-protection. She had learned to differentiate between situations and people who deserved her vulnerability and those who did not. This discernment gave her a sense of empowerment she had never felt before. She discovered that trusting again was not about erasing past pain. It was about integrating lessons, honoring her experiences, and moving forward with clarity and courage. Her heart, once guarded and hesitant, now had room for connection, empathy, and joy. One evening, Sophie met someone new at a small book club she had joined. She felt the familiar twinge of caution, but chose to approach the interaction with openness rather than fear. Conversation flowed naturally, laughter was shared, and mutual respect was evident. Sophie realized that trusting again didn't mean ignoring her boundaries or pretending past hurt didn't exist. It meant stepping forward with courage and choosing to believe in the possibility of genuine connection. Every smile, every shared idea, and every moment of engagement became a testament to the strength she had cultivated.
By the end of her journey, Sophie felt a profound sense of peace and empowerment. She understood that trust was a process, a daily practice, and a reflection of both self-awareness and courage. She had learned to open her heart gradually, to rely on her judgment, and to engage with the world from a place of confidence and authenticity. Sitting quietly in her apartment one evening, watching the city lights flicker, she whispered softly, "I have been hurt, but I am learning to trust again. I am wise, I am cautious, I am brave, and I am ready for genuine connection." Thank you for watching Whisped Tales. If Sophie's journey resonated with you or gave you hope that trust can be rebuilt after hurt, please like and subscribe. Next time, we'll bring you another story full of insight, courage, and lessons that can help you navigate life's challenges. Remember, even after heartbreak, your heart is strong enough to trust, love, and connect again. Take it one step at a time and honor your journey.